Devil's Racecourse, Chapter 3, written and read by the author. April 8th, current day. I'm not crazy, I whispered under my breath, looking deep into my own eyes through the bedroom mirror. My eyes were slightly bloodshot, red from holding back anxious tears. All I could do was pace. I'd been walking back and forth for almost an hour, trying to forget what I saw, pretending like it didn't happen. Try to convince myself that I'm just crazy, and that I'm not crazy all at the same time. I threw myself onto the bed, pressing my palms deep into my aching eyes. My conscience was battling itself. One part of my brain transfixed on trying to piece together every detail that I could remember about that thing. The other half begging me to forget it, move on, and just try to stay away from that boulder field, stay away from the woods. I had to have made it up. My eyes were looking for something to freak me out, something to deceive me. I was anxious about the missing boys. It wasn't real. But if it was real, if what I had seen was real, it was a real, living, breathing, moving being. What was it? What little I could see of it, it had the height of a crouching person, the slenderness of a deer, and the face of... well, I don't know how to describe it. I could hardly see it. Its facial features were animal, like a bat that had its mouth torn open, but its eyes were far more human than any animal I'd ever seen. Shallow sockets holding these deep, textured, malicious eyes. My phone buzzed beside me. I winced as the bright light of the screen hit against my aching irises. They slowly adjusted to read a message from Stevie. "Hey, P, you doing okay? You seemed a little tense earlier." I responded that I was fine and that I just hadn't been sleeping well, that things have just been weird and it'll pass. Standard BS to set his mind at ease. But in all honesty, I had been sleeping perfectly fine. I had a feeling tonight would be different. "Well, if you need anything, just let me know. Love you, Peaky." My phone buzzed again. "Or I can steal some Ambien from my dad. Keep me posted." I tried to smile at his response. Stevie was sweet. He had always held such genuine kindness, always trying to make me laugh. Peaky was his secret name for me, short for Peking Parker. He caught me watching him change one night while I was staying over with him. I hadn't even told him at that point that I liked him, or guys, but after that night I never really had to. I had made it clear in the most embarrassing way that a middle schooler could. He just laughed and told me I couldn't say shit next time he watched my sister change out of her bikini. I realized how utterly disgusting we both were, but again, we were hormonal 8th graders. We'd both grown since then. But as long as it was just the two of us, he'd never let me forget that night. We kept a lot of secrets to ourselves. A part of me just wanted to tell him what I saw, just to have someone validate me or tell me that I was out of my mind. But I knew him far too well to even attempt a conversation like that. He would lose his mind and get carried away. He'd grab a hunting knife from his dad's garage and try to scour the woods for some emaciated, deformed animal. I tossed my phone to the side, biting my tongue until I could figure out for sure if I was just making things up or not. There was a knock on the door. "Are you decent?" my sister asked. "Now's not a good time, Taryn." "That doesn't answer the question." Yes, I'm decent. Come in." I sat up. Taryn opened the door wide enough to slip in with a basket of clean laundry. She tossed it onto the ground. "Mom told me to bring these to you." "Thanks, but I would have gotten them myself." She stared at my face for a moment, taking in all of the clear signs of what my eyes have been put through in the past hours. I reached for my phone, hoping that I could just preoccupy myself enough that she would leave me be, but instead she sat on the edge of my bed. "They've been sitting in the laundry room for 2 days." I looked up from my phone at her. She looked as unpleased to have to play the big sister role as I was to not just be left alone. "Mom said you looked frazzled today when you got home. I guess you seemed off to her." "I'm fine." I trailed off with a light groan. She glared at me. "Well, you know how worried she gets, especially since those 2 Greenberg kids went missing. Taryn, I'm fine." I crossed my arm and pressed down on my stomach. My anxiety was eating at me. She paused for a moment. "Did you know them?" "No." I gave her the same answer I gave her 3 weeks ago when she tried to ask. "Did you know anyone who knew them? Mutual friends? I mean, Greenberg isn't that far away." "No. They're strangers. I don't know them. They were in high school." My words felt dissonant, cold, I thought about the two of them disappearing from memory, wishing that I knew them, wishing I knew enough to make sense of it all. It's okay if you're freaked out, Park. Please stop. I tried to throw my head back. It's freaky as hell. I wouldn't blame you if you were feeling some sort of way about it. I mean, the road they went missing on is only like 10 minutes from here. You never think things like that can happen that close to you. I've never seen something like that happen so close to us. Taryn, could you please leave? I felt suffocated by her presence. She looked at me, not surprised by my request, but not motivated by my plea. Look, I know I'm being a pain in the... Yeah, Taryn, actually you are. I'm freaked out, okay? It's been on my mind a lot lately, and you bringing it up when I'm trying to forget about it for the few hours that I have before I have to wake up and go to work, where all anyone is talking about is this, it isn't helping. She considered my words genuinely for a moment before rolling her eyes, shifting her demeanor with a tinge of frustration. Well, Mom has been on my ass all night about checking in on you to make sure that you're okay, because apparently you don't talk to her about what you're going through either. She just wants to make sure that you're all right. Make sure that you're handling all of this all right. The truth is that I wasn't handling any of this all right. I'm just stressed. With work and school, I'm tired of waiting to hear back from CMU or Temple so that I don't have to do another semester of a crappy community college curriculum. Hey, I did 4 years at that shitty community college. I get it. If you don't get accepted, it's not the end of the world. Her phone buzzed in her lap. She checked it briefly before tossing it aside. Ugh. I'm waiting for Rissy to text me back about the apartment under her new place. She groaned, leaning back to stare up at the ceiling. Ty took her on one of his BS apology dates. Apparently, he's still being a prick. She glanced at my phone and then back at me. Boys are stupid. I gave her my most insincere half smile. Are there any boys giving you trouble? My face flushed. I'm not having this conversation with you. So that's a yes. She smiled. Taryn. I wrapped my arms around my knees. Oh, stop, Park. We're both adults now. You can talk about this stuff. I wanted this to be over. Every word that left her lips felt like a metal drum just pounding behind my eyes. No, I'm not having any boy troubles. There are no boys in this town to give me trouble outside of the hicks that give me dirty looks and call me a fag. So, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just tired. My head hurts, and I just want to be alone, okay? Taryn let out a sigh and stood up. Well, when you come down for dinner, make sure you put on a smile so that Mom gets off of my butt about making sure that you're not depressed. I'm not going to be the one to call crisis if you go off the deep end and try to off yourself. She walked out the door, reached it open, but stopped herself. She turned and looked at me with remorse, sincerity reflecting off of her pupils. Just talk to me if you need to talk. I won't always be a few rooms over, Park, but I'm here now, regardless. She walked out, closing the door shut gently, leaving me feeling worse than when she entered. I did need to talk, but what could I say to her that she would believe? Chapter 4, Anthology, Roadkill. April 9th, current day. You ever passed a billboard post on your way to work and you thought to yourself, who actually changes those big things out? I mean, things don't just happen on their own, right? To us, gas station marquees and realtor signs, they just switch overnight. But someone has to manually replace those. Elevators don't just fix themselves when they break down. Hiking trails aren't often landscaped and mapped out by the earth itself. Some sad sap middle-class worker has to do it. Someone has to boil soaps and set up funerals and write up spam emails. And Douglas Guthrie, he cleaned up the roadkill. Doug let a fresh cigarette breathe him to life as his truck rolled down the mountainside. His trailer swayed from side to side, pushed by the brisk wind that 5 a.m. brings. Cleaning up decaying, tick-infested carcasses was in no way the position that Doug necessarily dreamed of doing. He had aspirations like everyone else in this shitty little podunk town, but like mother, like son. 2 drug possession charges and a dashboard of unpaid speeding tickets threw any aspirations he had out the window for a while, like the cigarette butt between his fingers. He started hauling dead animals off the road as community service. The municipality, they liked his work ethic and claiming he may have found his calling. A slap in the face, but hey, at least they started paying him. And with the public works department losing employees left and right, all they really had to do was dangle a little bit of cash over his head. That sacred little piece of security. They didn't give two shits about meth charges, or that he was described by that starchy Pecksniffian prosecutor as likely to reoffend, or that he was an ex-felon in the eyes of Pennsylvania State Police. He was willing to do the bottom of the barrel task, because what other choice did he have? Larger towns had much more efficient protocol for disposing of their roadkill. Stuff like the government provided sanitary vehicles or meticulous steps on how to safely move the carcasses without risking catching bugs, rabies, leptospirosis, whatever the hell that was. But this was a small town. A town drowning in woods, infested with opossums and deer and raccoons, just waiting to get railed down by some hick speeding for a joyride. The process of getting their attention was simple enough. If there was an animal in the road and you don't feel like moving it yourself, you call the local police or the DPW directly. If it's nighttime, there's an automated system for those questions. Standard stuff like domestic or free roam, dying or dead, 1 or 2 person lift job. Lifting a fox or a deer is a lot less gory with 2 people. Simple information so they know what they're dealing with. Sheila, that pretty little early bird, is usually in around 4:30 a.m. to check the voicemail box. The poor thing don't sleep much, but neither does Doug when he asks to hear from her. Most mornings, Doug was in the clear until at least after 7, once most townies made their commute. But this morning, he was awoken by his least favorite sound, the unceremonious signal from Sheila that he needed to haul his ass out of bed. A call that usually meant there was a traffic hazard that he needed to clean up before there was traffic. Good morning, Mr. Guthrie. We have a 1-person lift on the left side of Midvale Road, south of the blinking light. The caller didn't specify what the animal was, but he was very persistent that it needed to be cleaned up immediately. Good morning to you too, Miss Sheila. What kind of OPL is that damn urgent at? Doug croaked out, pulling his phone away from him to check the time. 4:57 a.m. He chuckled, half joking, but hoping he could talk his way out of the departure. The first call came in around 12:35 a.m. Some old man saying an unidentified carcass got hit. He was persistent. All of the calls seemed to come from the payphone outside of the 7-Eleven. He called back 6 times, left the same message every time. Normally, I'd just delete these kind of calls. The speed limit is 50 on that road, so an animal that small won't last in one piece for long, but She stopped herself. Her sudden change in tone gave Douglas a rather odd feeling he hadn't experienced from Sheila's usual chipper demeanor. He propped himself up to sit in bed. He just kept insisting, begging us to get out there and collect the thing before the sun rose. By the 2:48 call, I don't know. I can't explain it. The guy was practically in tears. Must have killed a pet or something. Would you mind just checking it out, cleaning up whatever's left of the poor thing? She asked in such a soft, gentle way, as if he had a choice. I know it's a little out of the way for you, but Ron didn't pick up. You live in North Res, don't you? That last one was void of the gentle tone, not hiding her disdain for the subset from which Doug was born and raised. Yeah, Ron's on a fishing trip, and yes, I do, ma'am. North Res, short for North Reservoir Mountain, was a sub-village carved into the Pennsylvania wilderness. Too far from any grocery store or gas station to be classified as a town, but built up and inhabited long before any of these so-called towns were even a thought. It was secluded enough that most Windboro citizens didn't bother coming up this way unless they were lost or looking for trouble. Every cottage was encapsulated with trees. Privacy was the number one priority. Privacy was sacred here. Doug broke through the tree line of the winding mountain road and cruised through the slick streets of the outer suburbia. The homes, or borderline mansions between North Red and Windboro Town Square, were just about as private as the rundown, dilapidated cottages up on the mountain. However, these folks didn't garner their privacy with Springfield M14s and thick tree lines. Each home had a perfectly touched-up plastic fence covering their 3 garages. High-tech security systems, he was sure, with locked keypads and cameras facing every which way. These were the type of folks with big bucks. They pushed the narrative of what this town had become and would continue to push it for years to come. The sun was just beginning to peek from behind the mountain tops as Doug passed the blinking red lights, enough to gradually shift the black night sky to a cool, deep gray. He didn't bother stopping at the four-way. No one would be on that road for at least another 20 minutes or so. He barreled forward, but as his headlights reflected off of something to his left, he was driving so fast he almost completely missed it. Some poor truck laying flipped on its side in the field. Jesus Christ, he mumbled to himself, rubbernecking past. Sheila didn't say anything about an accident. A seemingly important detail, he'd say. Douglas braced himself, wondering what kind of little shit turned a whole pickup truck on its head. The answer to that question was smashed into the concrete. Doug pulled his truck off to the right side, already dreading having to clean up this mangled thing. That smell of rotting matted fur and the engine fuel filled his nostrils. He slammed the door closed and reached for his neoprene gloves. He balled up 2 pieces of napkin to fill each nostril, then wrapped a KN95 around his ears. Doug always forgot about the smell, his least favorite part of the job. That rancid odor. Microscopic molecules flooding his nostrils, filling through millions of smell receptors, an unmistakable sign of decay. Ingrained in his brainwaves, Doug walked to the carcass cautiously, squinting to try to identify it in the dim light of the morning. The closer he got, the more confused he became, though. At first, he was sure it was a coyote with mange. The closer he got, he started to second-guess himself. The little thing had to be gangrene. Obviously, it had been pulverized by the pickup truck, but that didn't explain what happened to its mouth. The thing had no snout to begin with, a rather flattened face with gummy, exposed teeth, and lots of them. Its nose, well, if you could call it that, were just 2 muscly slits. The thing's body was rather small, but its legs were structured like no coyote he'd ever seen. Its lower legs and hips were structured the way that made them look almost human, like when a cat stands up on its 2 feet. All 4 of its paws had these long, outstretched toes, narrow and sharp, and it was laying on top of the splattered remains of what he could only guess was a squirrel. Now what the hell are you? Doug backed away, surveying slowly the brightening scene before him. The pickup was in pieces. It had clearly smashed its back half into the hillside before careening into the yard. The passenger window was smashed. He could see that. And in the driver's side door was... well, shit. Doug gasped for breath through his mask and ran towards the truck. It was still too dark to see if the younger man was still breathing. He got a few sprints down the hill before his ankle rolled in the mud. He toppled over himself, landing shoulder first in the grooves from the truck tire. He composed himself for a moment, redirecting his attention back to the driver positioned upside down. But before he could get back on his feet, a voice called out from above the hill.
Don't forget your gas mask if you're going to burn it.
Doug turned his neck, but could not locate the source of the voice. He got to his feet, thanking the Lord that his ankle wasn't shattered from the fall. He took a few shaky steps back up the hill. A little ways down the road was an older man, nearly ancient, with his hair as gray as the dawning sky. His car was parked on the edge of the dirt road. Hadn't been there before. He stood behind the open door with his car. He hadn't been there when Doug drove by earlier. Had Doug been distracted by the gangrene inbred coyote on the road and just didn't hear him pull in? Hello, sir. Can you call the police? I don't know that I get cell service out here, but there's been an accident.
I see.
He responded rather matter-of-factly. There was a pause as he stood there, statuesque and still, staring at Doug. He almost turned away before the man called out again.
Their blood is rather virulent. While burning their corpses is most effective process for avoiding further altercations, you do run the risk of airborne pathogens with combustion.
What the hell are you talking about? Call the damn police, please! Doug had enough. He turned and sprinted for the pickup.
I do highly suggest incineration.
Doug could no longer see the old man from the bottom of the hill, yet his voice seemed to hang in the air just as loud. He reached the truck without further slipping, slamming his palms into the window, hoping, praying it would wake the boy up.
Some have tried to throw them in a wood chipper, a horrid mistake. While it works to disintegrate the flesh, it's the blood that holds the most virile reaction to their kin.
Doug pulled out his phone to call for an ambulance. The boy's door was locked, and the windows, while smashed to shit, were far too jagged to crawl through. The boy was covered in mud and scabbing blood, sitting on purpling patches of bruises. He was still, more so than that man above shouting at them. The phone line was blank. No service.
What's dead is done, but do what you must.
The old man continued, unseen. Doug tried another call, but the line buzzed in his ear.
What's dead is done, but do what you must.
Fed up, he turned and jolted up the hill, hoping that maybe his steady fist could at least get a phone with a connection from that freak by his car. But as the dirt road came into view, the man and his car were gone. Doug sank, letting his ass slam into the mud. His eyes connected with the boy's, lifeless and straining, the nerves beginning to blacken around his shot corneas. Coyotes and deer were one thing. He didn't get paid enough for this, though. He stood up and walked back to the mangled corpse of whatever animal that poor kid hit. He gazed at it for a moment. He'd never seen anything quite like it. He'd seen thousands and thousands of bloody animals, but nothing like this. Its blood had long begun drying out, but there was a sheen to it, technicolored like metal on deep brown and red. It smelled like a Clorox bottle dumped on a corpse. The scent flooded his nostrils with every breath, pungent but expansive, like isomyl nitrates he'd huffed at the bars. It made him drool. He was mesmerized by this critter smashed into the concrete before him. He picked it up by its matted back paw. As he lifted it, the weight of its shattered skull pulled on its deteriorating neck skin, causing it to separate from its spine with a soggy mushing sound he'd hoped to never hear again. He swiftly reached down to catch its head, finally putting him face to face with the abomination's large, blackened eyes. He stared deep into them, shuddering. There was more life buried in those black orbs than the boy in the truck. Doug broke his stare for just a moment to check on the truck. The boy was still, suspended in air. He turned to look back at the dirt road, empty as before. He limped his way to the trailer, beginning to feel the tension in his twisted ankle. He opened the lift and stared down at the bed of roadkill he'd collected over the previous days. The pieces of this animal in his hands had matching texture to some, but he couldn't place a genuine connection to any of them. What the hell are you? He gazed back into his orbs. The rising sun reflected blue sparks into its irises. Doug laid the pieces gently on the edge of the trailer's floor. He reached in and grabbed the headless carcass of an opossum that had been pulverized a few days prior. What possessed him to leave it in the creature's place, he wasn't sure. But there was just this itch, this compulsion he hadn't felt since a few months after his last day in rehab. He slowly slipped his feet back into the pool of blood, the squirrel decay, and laid the possum onto it. He looked back at the truck, then to the door of the farmhouse that cast its shadow over it. He contemplated leaving then and there, but the boy's lifeless eyes flashed over his own. He began to wobble back down the hill to see if anyone was home.